What if everything you believe about yourself, your personality, your habits, your memories, even your deepest fears, isn't who you truly are? Sounds unbelievable, right? But what if the self you've known all your life is not a solid, unchanging core, but simply a story your mind keeps telling over and over? From the moment we learn to speak, we start shaping an identity. I'm this kind of person. I don't like that. I could never do this. Little by little, these ideas form a character, a version of you, that you carry into every conversation, every decision, every relationship. It feels so real, so personal. But is it true? Recent breakthroughs in psychology, combined with timeless insights from Buddhist teachings, suggest something far more radical. The self might just be a mental construct, a narrative built from thoughts, memories, and emotions. In today's video, we're going to explore this mind-bending idea and ask, if the self is just a story, what happens when we stop believing it? Let's find out together. The mind, your inner storyteller. Think about this. Every single day, from the moment you wake up to the moment your head hits the pillow, your mind is telling a story. It never really stops. Maybe it's replaying a conversation you had last week, worrying about how you came across. Maybe it's imagining what could go wrong tomorrow. Or maybe it's just filling in the silence with little background narratives. I'm tired. I'm not doing enough. Why did I say that? Sound familiar? The truth is, your mind doesn't just think. It narrates. It takes raw experiences and wraps them in meaning, and it's sneaky about it too. It doesn't say, here's one possible interpretation of reality. No. It says, this is who you are. It convinces you that the voice in your head is you. And before you know it, you're walking through life not just hearing the story, but living inside it. Buddhism has long recognized this inner chatterbox. In ancient texts, the mind is described as a monkey, constantly jumping from one branch to another, never resting. But here's the twist. While we often believe the mind is simply reporting on life, what if it's actually creating the version of life we think we're living? Psychologists call this narrative identity. The idea that we build our sense of self through the stories we repeat. And like any story, it's shaped by mood, memory, and even culture. Your self at 15 probably believed things your self today finds ridiculous. So, which version is the real you? What Buddhism gently points out is this. If the story keeps changing, maybe there was never a fixed storyteller behind it. Maybe the self isn't the author, but just another character on the page. The stories we tell ourselves again and again. Let's be honest. How many times have you heard this voice inside your head say something like, I'm just not good at math? Or maybe, I always screw things up. Maybe your version is, I'm terrible at relationships, or I never follow through on anything. These kinds of thoughts don't just pop up once. They replay over and over, and after a while, they stop sounding like thoughts and start feeling like fact. These stories often start early. Maybe a teacher made a careless comment in 5th grade, or your parents compared you to a sibling. Maybe you failed once, and your mind decided to write a headline, I'm a failure. And like a news ticker, that headline keeps scrolling at the bottom of your awareness, coloring everything you do. What's wild is, we rarely question these stories. We don't stop and ask, wait, is this even true? Because the voice sounds so familiar, so internal, that we assume it must be the voice of reason. But what if it's just a voice on repeat? A pattern, a habit of thought. Buddhism invites us to take a step back and look, not at what the story says, but at the fact there's a story at all. The Buddha didn't teach us to argue with every thought. He taught us to observe them. And in doing so, we begin to see that these self-defining stories are not who we are. They're just thoughts arising in the mind, and like all thoughts, they come and go. You are not the label you've been repeating to yourself for the last 10 years. You're not that headline. You're the awareness that sees it scroll by. Narrative identity. How psychology describes the self story. In modern psychology, there's a powerful idea called narrative identity. It means that who we believe we are isn't just based on facts. It's shaped by the personal story we've been telling ourselves for years. This story becomes the lens through which we see everything. It's not just, I grew up in this town, or I studied this subject. It's more like, I'm the one who never gets it right, or I'm always the outsider, or I have to be the strong one. And the more we tell this story, the more it sticks. Like grooves in a record, these thoughts become patterns. They guide the way we act, the way we relate, even the way we suffer. The story might have started with something small, a comment someone made, a childhood experience, a mistake we never let go of. But over time, it becomes who we think we are. What's interesting is, we often assume this story is just reporting the truth. But the mind isn't an objective narrator. It's more like a storyteller with a point of view. It edits the memories, fills in the blanks, and adds emotional meaning. Sometimes it exaggerates the pain or filters out the joy, all to fit the narrative. And we never really stop to question it. Why? Because it feels familiar. It feels like me. But here's where Buddhist wisdom steps in with a radical insight. Long before psychology named it narrative identity, the Buddha pointed to the same phenomenon and called it attachment to self, what he referred to as atta, or self-view. It's the clinging to the idea that there's a solid, unchanging I behind all this experience. But what if that I is just another chapter in the story? The Buddhist perspective. Mistaking the temporary for me. In Buddhism, this habit of clinging to our personal story has a name, self-identification, or what's known in ancient Pali as atta, the belief in a fixed, separate self. The Buddha taught that this belief is one of the deepest illusions we carry. It's the quiet assumption behind almost every thought we have. I am thinking, I am feeling, this is happening to me. But what if that I is simply a misunderstanding? According to the Buddha, we make a crucial mistake. We take what is impermanent, ever-changing, and conditioned, and we call it me. We look at a passing emotion like anger or sadness and say, I'm angry, or I'm depressed. We confuse the experience with the experiencer, and just like that, we get caught. Instead of allowing the feeling to rise and fall naturally, we wrap it into our identity. We carry it. We suffer with it. The Buddha compared this to picking up a stick that's on fire at one end. The moment we grasp it, we get burned. Not because the fire wanted to hurt us, but because we held it the wrong way. That's what self-identification does. It takes the flowing river of life, thoughts, emotions, memories, and turns it into a frozen story about who we are. But the truth is, nothing in our experience has ever stayed the same. Not our body, not our thoughts, not even our personality. We are a process, not a person. This insight isn't meant to scare us. It's meant to free us. Because when we stop holding on so tightly to I, me, and mine, we begin to open to something much deeper. The quiet, spacious awareness that was there all along, watching it all unfold. Who's telling the story? Just because you've told yourself the same story 1,000 times doesn't mean it's true. And just because it feels real doesn't mean it is you. Buddhism doesn't ask us to blindly believe anything. It invites us to turn inward and investigate, with curiosity, not judgment. So here's a question worth sitting with. Who's telling this story? Is there really someone behind the scenes, pulling the strings, writing the script? Or is the story just unfolding on its own? One thought triggering another, shaped by memory, emotion, habit? If you close your eyes for a moment and simply observe, you might notice that the story keeps going, even without anyone directing it. Thoughts appear, emotions rise, mental commentary spins up out of nowhere. But who exactly is narrating? This is where things start to shift. Buddhism teaches that when we look deeply into this storyteller, this me we've always assumed was in charge, we don't find some solid core, we find a process, a stream, a flow, and like a movie playing in an empty theater, all the drama, tension, and noise are happening. But there's no actor behind the curtain. What we usually call me is just a bundle of patterns, thoughts echoing past experiences, feelings reacting to imagined futures. There's no fixed self running the show, just a story being told over and over again. And once we start seeing that, a quiet kind of freedom begins to open up. What are you made of? Introducing the 5 aggregates. So if we start questioning the idea of a fixed self, the natural next step is, then what are we really? The Buddha offered a brilliant framework for this question, something called the 5 aggregates, or in Pali, Pancakandha. Think of them like the 5 basic ingredients that make up every moment of your human experience. First, there's form, rupa, your physical body, everything you can touch, see, smell, or hear. Then comes feeling, vedana, the raw sensation of whether something is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Third is perception, sana, your mind's ability to label and recognize what's happening. Is that a dog barking or someone laughing? Your brain decides in a split second. Next, we have mental formations, sankhara, your thoughts, intentions, habits, and emotional patterns. These are the stories, assumptions, and reactions that color your world. And finally, there's consciousness, vinana, the simple knowing that experience is happening, the awareness itself. According to the Buddha, everything you think of as you can be found within these 5. They're not mystical or abstract. They're right here, in your direct experience, your body, your emotions, your thoughts, your habits, your awareness. And here's the key. None of these are permanent. They're constantly shifting, flowing, changing, which means if everything you're made of is constantly changing, where exactly is the fixed self hiding? It's a powerful question, one that doesn't need an answer, just your attention. I is a process, not a thing. Once we begin to look at these 5 aggregates, body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, we start to notice something subtle but deeply important. Not one of them can truly be called me. Take your body, for example. It's constantly changing. The cells you had 10 years ago are gone. Your appearance shifts. Your energy, your health, even the way you carry yourself, all of it is in motion. So how could something so fluid be the foundation of a fixed identity? What about feelings? One moment you're relaxed, the next you're irritated. Joy, boredom, sadness, excitement. Each one arises, stays for a bit, and fades. You don't control them, and you certainly can't hold on to them. They're visitors, not residents. Then there's perception, the mind's way of interpreting the world. But that too shifts with age, culture, mood, and memory. You might see the same event differently tomorrow, depending on how much sleep you got or what someone said to you 5 minutes before. Mental formations? These are your thoughts, intentions, habits, and reactions. They're the building blocks of personality. But even those change. Who you were 5 years ago is not who you are today. You've let go of old beliefs, adopted new ones, and rewritten entire chapters of your story, often without realizing it. And consciousness, the awareness of it all, isn't a thing that stays the same. It flickers, it moves, it's dependent on what you're paying attention to. Put all of this together and you start to see. There's no single thread that runs through it all and says, "This is me, always and forever." What we call I is more like a dance, a flow of changing experiences happening moment by moment. The Buddha didn't deny your experience. He simply asked, "Is there anything here that doesn't change? If not, then why cling to it as a permanent self?" When we really start to look, we don't find a solid thinker behind the thoughts, just the thinking itself. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. In one of the Buddha's most profound teachings, he offered a simple phrase, a kind of inner compass to guide our reflection. When looking deeply at the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, he encouraged his students to say, "This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself." At first it can sound strange, almost cold, like a denial of life. But it's not about rejecting your experience. It's about seeing clearly. The Buddha wasn't telling us to become detached robots. He was pointing out something far more liberating, that the things we cling to as me are not really under our control, and they're not truly who we are. Think about it. Did you choose your thoughts this morning? Did you decide which emotions would arise today? Of course not. They just came. And just like clouds drifting across the sky, they'll pass. "This is not mine" means I don't possess this experience. This I am not reminds us I don't have to build my identity from it. "This is not myself" invites us to loosen the grip, to stop wrapping our sense of being around what is always changing. It's not about rejecting your body or your mind. It's about realizing that your freedom doesn't come from controlling them. It comes from no longer mistaking them for you. When you start to apply this phrase gently, like a whisper of wisdom in the background of daily life, something begins to shift. The old, tight story of me starts to loosen, and in that space, something quieter, more spacious, more compassionate begins to emerge. Not a new identity, but awareness itself, like a character in a novel. Imagine just for a moment that your life is like a novel. It has chapters, plot twists, emotional highs and lows. There's a childhood scene, a heartbreak chapter, maybe a few awkward comedy moments sprinkled in. Every day the story continues. New experiences, new roles, new voices. And at the center of it all, there's a character you call me. But here's the twist. What if there's no one actually writing the story? That's the insight the Buddha gently pointed to. We experience thoughts, emotions, sensations, and reactions, yes. But when we try to find the solid self behind all of it, the one directing the whole thing, we come up empty. It's like flipping through the pages of a novel, watching the character evolve, suffer, grow, and change, and then realizing that the character isn't real outside of the story. The events are happening, the feelings are vivid, but there's no permanent person holding it all together. This doesn't make the story meaningless. It makes it fluid, open, and alive. Just like in a book, a character might go through pain, joy, transformation, but they're not the one writing the next page. The story moves by causes and conditions. One scene leads to the next. In Buddhist practice, this is more than a metaphor. It's an invitation to step out of identification with the character and begin to rest in the awareness that's reading the story. Not caught in it, not trying to rewrite it, just witnessing. You are not the storyline. You are the space in which the story unfolds. And maybe, just maybe, that's where true freedom begins. A feeling or me. Here's something to reflect on. Think back to a painful memory, maybe a breakup, a moment of deep embarrassment, a loss. The kind of moment that still stirs something in you, even years later. Now, as that memory comes up, ask yourself, is it really me that's feeling sad right now? Or is it simply a feeling passing through? It seems like a small difference, but it changes everything. When we recall something painful, the body reacts. A heaviness in the chest, a tightening in the stomach. The mind starts narrating again. I was so hurt. They shouldn't have done that. I'll never forget it. And just like that, we're back in the story, as if it's happening all over again. But if you pause, really pause, and just observe, you might notice something. The sadness is there, yes, but it's arising within your awareness. It's not who you are. It's a passing state, a ripple, a shadow of a past event. Buddhism teaches us that this is the nature of feeling, Vedana. It comes, it stays for a bit, it leaves. But the moment we say, I am sad, instead of sadness is arising, we wrap our identity around it, and suffering begins. This is where mindfulness becomes so powerful. It allows us to feel everything fully, without becoming the feeling. It's not about pushing pain away. It's about seeing it clearly for what it is, a moment, not a definition. You are not your sadness. You are the one who sees it and lets it go. When the story becomes a cage, have you ever noticed how certain stories you tell yourself feel heavy? Like they're not just thoughts, but identities you're carrying around. I'm the one who always gets hurt. I need to succeed or I'm nothing. I can't afford to mess up again. These narratives don't just shape how we see ourselves. They shape how we suffer. Buddhism teaches that it's not the thoughts themselves that cause us pain. It's the clinging to them. When we fuse with a story, especially one wrapped in fear, pride, or shame, we stop seeing it as a passing mental event. We start seeing it as the truth, as me. Take the story, I'm a sensitive person. I get hurt easily. That might feel true, and in some ways it may reflect your lived experience, but the moment it becomes your identity, you begin walking through life bracing for pain. Every word feels personal. Every silence feels like rejection. And slowly, without realizing it, you're living inside a prison built from a single line of inner dialogue. Or consider the pressure of, I have to succeed. On the surface, it can sound like motivation, but underneath, it often hides fear. Fear of failure, of being unworthy, of not being enough. And when your worth is tied to achievement, even success feels fragile. One slip, and the whole story collapses. This is how suffering takes root. Not from what's happening outside, but from the weight we place on our own self-hidden. The tighter we hold to who we think we're supposed to be, the harder it becomes to breathe. But here's the good news. If the story is something we're clinging to, that means we can also let it go. Just a thought. Picture this. You're sitting quietly, eyes closed, maybe in meditation or just taking a break from a busy day. At first, everything seems still, but then, like an uninvited guest, a thought shows up. Maybe it's a worry. What if I messed up that conversation earlier? Or maybe a judgment. I'll never be good at this. Instinctively, your body tightens. The mind leans in. You start to follow the thought, build a story around it, feel the emotions that come with it. But then something shifts. Instead of getting pulled into the thought, you just notice it. You say to yourself gently, "Oh, that's just a thought." In that moment, something powerful happens. You're no longer in the thought. You're watching it. And in that space of simple awareness, the thought begins to lose its grip. It's still there, but it doesn't feel so solid anymore. It's more like a cloud drifting by than a truth carved in stone. This is one of the quiet miracles of mindfulness. It doesn't make your thoughts disappear. It just reminds you that you are not them. You don't have to argue with every judgment or obey every fear. You can notice them, breathe, and let them pass. The Buddha didn't teach us to fight the mind. He taught us to understand it, to see its patterns clearly and compassionately, because once we can see that a thought is just a thought, it stops being a prison and becomes something much lighter, something we can let go, even if just for a moment. That's freedom. Letting go doesn't leave you empty. It sets you free. One of the biggest fears people have when they hear teachings about no self or letting go of identity is this: if I stop holding on to who I am, what's left? It sounds like emptiness, like losing something essential. But here's the beautiful truth. Letting go doesn't make you disappear. It makes you free. You see, the stories we cling to, I'm not enough, I have to prove myself, I'm always the one who gets hurt. They don't just define us, they limit us. They become invisible walls that shape how we move through life, how we react, how we love, and how we suffer. And the tighter we grip these stories, the more narrow our world becomes. But when you begin to see those stories for what they are, just thoughts, just mental habits, you don't lose who you are. You open up to who you've always been, beneath the noise. This isn't about erasing your past or pretending you don't have a personality. It's about realizing that your true nature is far more spacious than any label, role, or narrative. When you let go of the idea that you have to be someone specific, you suddenly have room to be everything else: kind, curious, creative, compassionate, and deeply alive. The Buddha never asked us to become blank slates. He simply pointed to the unnecessary suffering we carry when we mistake our thoughts for the truth. And in releasing that grip, we don't fall into a void. We return to a stillness that was always there, waiting, not emptiness, but freedom. Science catches up. Mindfulness and the space between stimulus and reaction. As it turns out, what the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago about the power of simply observing your thoughts and emotions without getting entangled, is now being confirmed by modern science. Studies in neuroscience and psychology have shown that mindfulness practice literally changes the brain. One of the most well-known programs, mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, developed by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, has helped thousands of people reduce anxiety, depression, and even chronic pain. And the core of it? Learning to watch your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them. When people practice mindful awareness, just noticing a thought or emotion as it arises and saying, okay, that's here right now, something remarkable happens. The brain's stress centers, like the amygdala, begin to quiet down. Activity increases in areas linked to emotional regulation and self-awareness, like the prefrontal cortex. In simple terms, when you observe instead of react, your nervous system finds space to breathe. This space is powerful. It's the difference between snapping at someone in anger and taking a conscious breath, between spiraling into anxiety and recognizing, that's worry arising right now. It doesn't mean you stop feeling, it means you stop being driven by what you feel. This is why mindfulness isn't about escaping life. It's about being present for it, fully and wisely. And as the research shows, the more you train this capacity, the more resilient, calm, and open you become. Not by chance, but by choice. You're not at the mercy of every thought. You're learning to sit beside them, watch them drift by, and gently return to your center. Beyond the old story, what the Buddha actually taught. Let's clear up a common misunderstanding. The Buddha didn't teach us to get rid of ourselves. He wasn't saying you shouldn't exist or erase your personality. That's not the message of Buddhism at all. What he taught was much more compassionate and much more freeing. He saw that most of our suffering comes not from who we are, but from the stories we hold about who we must be. Stories like, I always mess things up, or I have to be perfect, or I'm the kind of person who never gets it right. These stories become cages, not because they're always wrong, but because we believe them so tightly that we stop growing beyond them. The Buddha invited us to look beyond the surface, to see that who we think we are is often just a patchwork of old habits, inherited beliefs, and unexamined fears. And then he asked a powerful question. What happens when we stop clinging to that version of ourselves? This isn't about becoming no one. It's about becoming free. Free to respond instead of react. Free to meet each moment without dragging every past moment into it. Free to love, to fail, to create, to begin again, without being defined by the past. The Buddha didn't ask us to throw ourselves away. He asked us to stop mistaking the story for the self, to live not as the character trapped in a fixed narrative, but as the awareness that can step outside the script and breathe. And in that breath, there's a new kind of life waiting to unfold, living like the sky, the heart of mindfulness. Living with mindfulness isn't about controlling your thoughts or forcing yourself to be calm all the time. It's more like learning how to sit back and watch the weather of your own mind without getting pulled into every passing storm. Imagine this. Your mind is the open sky, big, quiet, boundless. Thoughts come and go like clouds. Some are light and harmless like daydreams or plans. Others are heavy and dark, worries, anger, old regrets. But no matter how wild the sky gets, the space itself doesn't change. It holds everything without becoming anything. That's what mindfulness is. It's not a technique you use once a day. It's a way of being. It means showing up for your life with your eyes open, without constantly getting dragged into the next worry or lost in yesterday's story. It's about noticing what's happening in real time and saying, okay, this is what's here right now. You're not trying to push thoughts away or chase after better ones. You're just choosing to be the space that holds them all, without grabbing on, without getting lost. And over time, something shifts. The thoughts don't stop coming, but they stop running your life. Emotions still rise, but they don't knock you over. You begin to realize that you don't have to fix everything, figure everything out, or constantly rewrite your inner script. You can just be here, clear, present, unshaken, like the sky, playing the role without becoming the role. You're still going to live your life. You'll still show up as a friend, a parent, a partner, a professional, an artist, whatever roles life calls you to play. But mindfulness offers something radical. You don't have to get lost in the role anymore. Think about it like this. An actor steps into a part, gives it their full presence, full emotion, full expression. But when the scene ends, they step off the stage. They don't carry the character home with them. They don't forget who they really are. That's what living with awareness is like. You can be fully present for your life, fully engaged in your relationships, your work, your passions, without letting any of it define your worth. You can be a loving parent without the pressure of being a perfect one. You can be a devoted friend without carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. You can create, lead, love, and grow while knowing that who you are goes far deeper than any label or role you've ever worn. The problem isn't the role. The problem is forgetting it is a role. When we attach our identity to what we do or how others see us, we become fragile. Every criticism cuts deeper. Every mistake feels personal. But when we hold our roles lightly, like clothes we wear for a time, we can show up more authentically, with more grace, and without fear of losing ourselves. Buddhism doesn't ask us to walk away from life. It asks us to wake up within it, to play our part fully, but without the need to cling. Because the truth is, freedom isn't about stepping off the stage. It's about remembering that you're not just the actor, you're also the space the whole play unfolds in. The ultimate freedom, no longer a prisoner of your story. Real freedom doesn't always come with fireworks or dramatic transformation. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's simply the moment you realize, I don't have to keep believing everything my mind tells me. You don't have to keep replaying that same old story, the one that says you're not enough, that you'll never change, that you're forever broken. You don't have to keep identifying with every memory, every label, every fear that once defined you. This is the gift of the Dharma. The Buddha never asked us to destroy the self. He simply showed us how to stop mistaking the story for the self. And in that simple shift, in that space between thought and awareness, something opens. Suddenly, you're no longer a prisoner of the narrative. The past no longer has the same grip. You can remember it without reliving it. You can feel your emotions without drowning in them. You can hear the old thoughts and not be dragged back into their logic. It's not that the story disappears. It's that you stop being trapped inside it. This is what Buddhism calls liberation. Not from the world, not from responsibility, but from the invisible walls we build around ourselves. When you realize You're the awareness behind the story, not the character in it. You begin to live from a deeper place, not defined, not confined, just here. And that, truly, is the beginning of peace. You are not the story. You are the awareness in which all stories arise and pass. That truth isn't something you need to force yourself to believe. It's something you begin to sense, little by little, the more you sit with it. When the mind spins its old patterns, when you feel yourself getting pulled into doubt, fear, or regret, just pause, breathe. Remember that the story might be loud, but it's not the whole of you. You're not the character on the page. You're the space in which the whole book unfolds. If something in this video resonated with you, let it settle for a moment. Let it echo in the quiet space of your own awareness. And if you feel called, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. What story have you been living in, and what might it feel like to gently step outside of it? Your insight could be the mirror someone else needs. If you'd like more reflections like this, grounded in Buddhist wisdom but made for the everyday mind, go ahead and like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being here, for listening with your heart. Until next time, stay gentle, stay awake, and remember, you were never the story. You are the space it moves through.